and call this meeting to order. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Carrie, will you call roll, please?
Nicole Cohen.
Here.
Archana Allier.
Here.
John Masden.
Absolutely here.
Kathy Cox.
Here.
Lisa Ramon.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight, we are going to start things off with item 1.5, which is our bond hearing, and this is presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. According to ARS 15-491K, the district is required to hold a hearing annually between September 1st and October 31st until bond proceeds are spent, at which time an update of the progress of capital improvements financed through bonding is discussed, and at which time the public is permitted an opportunity to comment. The bond report gives a summary of each bond project and the combined expenditures to date. I have a PowerPoint presentation here behind you and a hard copy in front of you, so you don't, again, as like last week, you don't have to turn around and look at the screen. So as mentioned in what I just read in the informational item, the summary of bond expenditures is shown here on that slide. This is also what the voters saw in the voter pamphlet that went out back before November of 2016. That far left column, or the left side of the gray bar, is what the voters saw in that voter pamphlet. The right side of the gray bar is what we added, so that way it shows the district and the community, the expenditures up to the end of last fiscal year. So you can see in each of the groups, each of those groups listed, you can see that in construct, remodel, and renovating, improving school facilities and buildings, we're at 13, just over 13 million year to date from June 30th.
We can't hear you, Mike.
I think my mic just went out.
Oh, okay.
Geez, want mine?
Is that better?
Oh.
It went out on me. So year to date, June 30th of 2020 was just over 13 million. You can see there in the broken outline of athletic field improvements, we were just over 4 million. And pupil transportation, about 1.5 million, 1.6 million. And then under administrative purposes, now these are expenditures that do not trickle down to the school level. They're more administrative support, administrative functions of the district. You're looking at 1.1 million compared to the overall projected cost of 1.99 million as outlined in the voter pamphlet. That's on page 5 as it's referenced there at the top. So the remainder of the presentation is pretty much visuals, so that way the board and the community can see what we've been working on during the fiscal year of 20. There's a summary of a kind of a collage of photos there, from transportation to site improvements, technology and surveillance. On the next slide, it'll show the maintenance projects that were completed in fiscal year 20. The carpet project, district-wide carpet project, lasted approximately close to 2 years. It did span 2 fiscal years. So last fiscal year, we concluded with Lake Havasu High School, finishing up with the elementaries listed there: Smoke Tree, Havasupai, Starline, Nautilus, Oro Grande, and Jamaica. Building improvements, renovation improvements mainly consisted of pre-construction services in fiscal year 20. And then in transportation, we purchased 2 route buses and 1 special needs bus that arrived last fiscal year. In the next slide, there's a breakdown of technology, where it shows that surveillance, we completed our surveillance project. and we have 400-plus camera views and recordings now available across the district. Approximately, well, just a little over 100-plus computers, teachers and student computers. Projectors, we also replaced approximately 50 projectors with low-maintenance LED units. The older units that were failing were replaced with the lower maintenance LED units as described. And computer labs, we replaced old labs at both Thunderbolt and Starline in fiscal year 20. The next slide for projects that are future projects as well as in progress in building improvements. We are continuing to work on perimeter fencing around our buildings, landscaping, security improvements, paving, playgrounds. Those are just a few. Technology, recently, the board approved expenditures to replace bells, clocks, phones, and intercoms at our elementary and middle school and high school buildings. Wi-Fi system that has approximately just over 200-plus access points. Computer labs will continue to be ongoing projects in the future to replace out the old computer labs with new equipment. More secure server spaces with storage racks. We currently have storage racks that are out in the open, tucked away in the corner of rooms where we'd like to put those into a secured cabinets throughout the district. Again, LED projectors, as the old projectors do fail, then we'll be replacing them with LED projectors. Transportation, currently on order, due to arrive around December. So in just a few months, we have 2 route buses and 1 activity bus that is due to arrive. And then currently, ongoing in progress, we have phase 2 of our athletic field projects at the high school, as well as Thunderbolt, and these are estimated to be completed on January of 2021. The next slide shows just projects, your visuals for technology, as I just described, your LED projectors, your telephones, the newer towers, if you will, for computers, much smaller than the old towers that take up a ton of room, and then your storage cabinets there for your servers. In the next slide, we see visuals there of what has been and what will be. The one on the right is some extensive renovations, interior renovations in the office areas for security improvements. That's actually at Havasupai Elementary. And then the picture on the left will be future expansion, breakout, and expansion of sidewalks there at Jamaica, including a staircase that goes down to access the lower field. That will help with the evacuation of buildings, more timely to get kids out of the buildings and into an open area should an emergency arise. Right now, there's one path that leads down to the field, and that area gets pretty congested, so we want to create better access to our outside area there at Jamaica. The next slide shows currently our biggest projects that are ongoing right now at Oro Grande Elementary and Starline. You can see extensive renovations occurring, still underway at this point. Hopefully these projects will be wrapped up around December as well. For outside security improvements as well as inside security improvements, these sites will also receive all new playground equipment and just overall perimeter fencing, landscaping, much more efficient and effective access and functionality of these buildings for phase 1. And then the other elementaries have already received their drawings. We have those in hand, and we're looking to begin that phase probably within the next year for the other 4 elementary sites. All 6 elementaries do have, though they did undergo or are currently undergoing some substantial security improvements in the office areas as well, currently. So that's not part of phase 2. And then the final slide that I have here is what you can see is in progress at the high school, or the campus where we're located now. There is, at the time of this photo, you can see on the left where the footings were being poured for the high school administration building. where the front office will be relocated to, as well as the picture on the right just happened to be at a time where they were pouring footings for our athletic fields down there at the baseball softball complex. That's all I have, Madam President, members of the board, for the project update for fiscal year 20. Any questions?
Mr. Murray, I have just one statement. I think that you personally have done a very good job in structuring and putting these programs and these projects together and saved our district money up front in how they were done. And I would like to just thank you, and I would also like to offer for board decision whether or not to approve 1.5.
We don't actually have to approve it because it already is in progress. So it's not an item that we need to vote on tonight. We already voted on it.
It's
That's-
informational.
Most times we have to vote to approve bond reports.
Are there any questions or? Okay,
Maybe from the community, they might, I don't know.
sure. Are
People
there
here.
questions from our community
Anybody?
members?
Stephanie Luaris. The board has continually given accolades for the bond and override projects that have gone on. And I think sometimes that once in a while we get stuck in the mindset that the board is a parent, teacher, and student committee, and that the community at large is not a stakeholder in this. And I just love hearing the bond project review. This, and just as a stakeholder in the community who doesn't have children, I've sat here from the inception of the bond project and watched these reviews come in. And this is something that we can be proud of that's going on in our community. And I just, as somebody that is a stakeholder in this, who sometimes doesn't feel as accepted, that is, and sometimes is treated less than, I get excited about this. I'm appreciative of the work that's gone on here, and I just want to extend my thanks to all that you do. This is exceptional work. This is something that we're so proud of in our community, that we put forth the vote to get this done, and we can be proud of it. So just thank you. Thank you for the hard work and the integrity of what you've done with these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I think you hit the nail on the head that some of these projects, especially when I think about the athletic fields and playgrounds and things like that, beautifying the grounds, it really is a source of community pride. I think you said it very eloquently. And I am particularly excited for the walking path that's going to be put around the athletic field at the high school that's going to be open to the community, because I think that will help people who, as you were describing, people who are definitely stakeholders, feel like they're welcome to be at our facilities. So, thank you.
I would like to say thank you, Stephanie, and you reminded me of something over the years that I've been in the district, how many of our PTACs at all the elementary schools have spent hours and hours raising money to put in safe playground equipment and signage and things that most districts normally find the funds to do for themselves. But you know, they did it. They needed to do it. We needed playground equipment. And I think of all of the people in the community that supported all of the sales that the PTACs put on for years. And, you know, they did it. This is going to be really good, up-to-date, safe equipment, and it's a wonderful thing because the community is now paying for it in a different way, not through PTACs. And now PTACs can do their fundraising for other things that are near and dear to their heart that they need at the school. And so thank you for being excited, because I think we are too.
Are there any other comments or questions from our audience?
I wanted to say one thing since everybody's making comments. I just wanted to mention that the team that put the bond together in 2016, many are here, I'm not going to name people by name, but this was definitely a community effort. And we had not passed a bond in Lake Havasu since '96 and an override since 2005. And it was really the community trusting in the community group that put the bond together because there was a lot of distrust in the district. So I too am appreciative of how transparent everybody in the district that worked on the bond and override project and how they have been so forthright with information, good or bad, very publicly. So I think that it's also worth mentioning that part of the conversation that surrounded all the meetings at all the schools, you know, we had a meeting at every single school in 2016 as we were trying to put this package together. And part of it was if we take care of the needs of the staff and if we take care of the buildings, then we're going to get to the philosophy. And it's just worth mentioning before we have our you know, board evaluation and whatnot, ongoing conversations, that was part of the conversation at the time. So I just wanted to mention that because I won't be here next year. So, but I am appreciative of the way that it's been described every time we have an update and the work that's been done, and we've really stuck to what was promised to the community, and that I'm grateful for.
It's my pleasure as well to know that people like Steve Greeley and Tracy Jones participated in this and helped everybody get to the point where we got stuff done for this district. It was a very, very tough thing to have happen in the past, and this just came all about in 2016 and was a good way to do it. And our district is benefiting from that. And we've got people that are doing these projects from within our district that are doing them the right way.
Anything further from our board? Okay. Do we have any calls to the public? We will move on to recognition of visitors, although I don't think our LHCEA representative is here. I don't see her. Do I have a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve Article 4 as presented.
I second.
Archana Alliar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Sam. Can you turn on my speaker, please?
Mr. Brindis, Mrs. Fleming has requested that you turn on her speaker.
Not working. Go ahead.
Item 5.1 is the second presentation and review of revised policies, and it's presented by Dr. Stone.
Thank you, Madam President, and we are coming back tonight with some requested revisions at the last. Can you hear me? We're coming back tonight with some requested revisions to the policies. Policy Advisory Number 673, IH8, Basic Instructional Program, and Policy Advisory Number 675, KB, Parent Involvement in Education. Just a reminder, IHA specifies that September 25th in each year shall be observed as Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, which is not a legal holiday. If Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or other day when a public school is not in session, the preceding or following school day shall be observed in the public school as the holiday. ARS 15-710.01 adds that on Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, each public school in the state shall dedicate the majority of the school day to civics education. The second policy, KB Senate Bill 1061, has added Section 15-249 to the statutes, which states access to the Arizona DOE statutory handbook of parental rights be prominently posted on a publicly accessible portion of the district website. Requests for changes to these policies were made by the board at the September 15th, 2020 regular board meeting. Language changes are noted with highlighting. The first reading was on August 18th, 2020. So we can start with IHA, the Basic Instructional Program. And there are three kind of paragraphs at the end of that policy that have to do with adding the Sandra Day O'Connor day, if we want to start with that one.
I'm sorry?
If we want to start with that policy.
Okay. Do I have a motion on item 5.1?
I make a motion to open discussion on
Okay.
5.1.
Do I have a second on that?
I second.
Would you like to review the paragraph that was in question?
The first paragraph is just what I read about. September 25th is observed as the Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day. The second paragraph is that piece about if it falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or other day, when it's not in session, that you observe it the following or the preceding day. The final paragraph states that the superintendent is directed to emphasize the use of the resources developed by the State Board of Education relating to civics education, which align with the academic standards in social studies pursuant to ARS 15-701 and 15-701.01.
I will open, so let's have discussion amongst our board.
So this is another mandate from the legislature and the governor. And I would like to remove the third paragraph that's inserted. It's inappropriate for statute to be telling the board to direct the superintendent of our school district. That thwarts our local control, and it's just completely unnecessary. And as far as I know, the State Board of Ed has not developed the resources that they're referencing, unless I'm mistaken.
So your objection is that is it kind of asking us
Just
to
doesn't
approve
apply.
something that we can't really review first?
Right.
Okay. Can we get rid of this paragraph and still be compliant with the statutes that are listed?
Yes.
I will agree with Mrs. Cohen on the superintendent should not be forced to do this. And I would second anything she has put in on the reason not to pass this as presented.
I have a concern. I think that we are all in favor of civics education. But an entire day that really disrupts, just the planning at every school for all of the grade levels of an entire day, even if the state provides the curriculum, that is just overkill. That's just my opinion, having been a teacher. So I think that over time, the impact of this, it's going to be a burden, which is going to be a bad thing, because we would want more civics education. But I don't know how to get around that, but that's my opinion.
I really don't share your objections to the civics, incorporating that. Of course, the goal is to have civics be part of our school curriculum every day.
Yes.
In some form or another, but I don't have any personal objection to setting aside one day to specifically emphasize that. I think that's actually a positive thing, not a negative.
No, but the planning that goes on into that is going to be enormous. And then when you after the planning, the entire day, there's no math, there's no reading, there's no, that's social studies certainly, but I would rather, if you're going to do it an hour a day for a week or something rather than an entire day. It seems like we should have some flexibility in delivering this.
Well, and maybe Dr. Stone can speak to this a little bit more specifically, but I see it as, in your language arts class, you would be still focusing on learning language arts, but it would just be with something that's more focused on civics. So maybe you're reading a text or a speech from a famous orator or something like that. Dr. Stone, do you have
So
specific?
what I will say is clearly focusing on civics is a great thing. For a full day of it, it will take some creativity. But the good news is it's we have another year because it's September 25th of next year. So our teachers have time to really plan and talk about how would that look in a whole day? And what are some things we can adjust in our day to make it fit into the different subjects that we do have? So I actually think it would be very positive and that teachers will be able to come up with something really creative. And once they've done that for a year, they'll have about a year to plan. And once they've done that the first time, then it's really just kind of about looking at resources and tweaking things that need to be changed for the upcoming year. But I think they will be able to make that a very positive day.
What bothers me about this is there are Arizona revised statutes that are in play telling us what we must do and how we must teach kids. Those Arizona revised statutes don't necessarily cover what this district is prepared today to do. And it references for the superintendent, Arizona revised statute 15701 and 15701.01 as the things that are going to force her to do certain things if we adopt this.
Well, those statutes are just referencing the standards, the social studies part of the standards. So they're just using that as a reference point. I'm not concerned about the statutes being located there. I'm just concerned about our policy saying the superintendent is directed to emphasize uses. That's what I have a problem with, because that's not their job to demand that we adopt that language, so.
I agree with that as well.
So we could close discussion and have a motion and to approve this with the exception of that third paragraph, and that would be acceptable.
We could, but before we do that, I also wanted to make a note, just because it all happens to be coming up at the same time, I think that we should come back to this policy at a later time once we get through this one. But this should be aligned with IA, our instructional goals. It should be very similar, in my opinion. And then also it kind of touches on Mr. Hawkins' presentation last year, November 2019, and it will also apply going forward on our next action items. He did a presentation and spoke about aligning to IA and the basic IHA, which this is, in terms of measurement. So I think we should touch on that in the future, whenever that's happens to be appropriate.
I don't think that we're actually ready today to put a combined action on this. And I would promote that we actually avoid voting on this tonight and give ourselves at least another 30 days in order to come to an actual good decision on this.
I feel like I do have enough information to vote on this today, and I do support striking through that third paragraph, like Mrs. Cohen was talking about. But I think we can vote on this one way or the other. Or if other board members don't agree, then they can do that by voting down the motion.
I'm actually looking at KB, parental
We're not
involvement
there yet,
in
though.
education. And there are parts of that that cause me concern as I just pause and go through it.
Like what?
That we are now responsible for a plan, we're responsible for a plan for parent participation in school designation.
Where is
To improve parent and teacher cooperation in such areas as homework, attendance, and discipline. We're actually going not just to the superintendent with this, we're pushing things down to our staff.
Where, can you tell me where you are?
KB, he moved on to
Yeah,
the
but
second
what
one.
paragraph?
Top paragraph,
A. You're-
number A.
Okay, all right, okay.
All right, number A, excuse me.
I think I have the most sensitive mic up here.
It also says on the next page, 205 for KB, the right to opt into sex education curriculum if one is provided by the district. That opens up a lot of things that we've already decided as a board to move out to the future, and that's gonna mean that we're gonna have to make policy on those things in short order.
This doesn't obligate us to offer something that we don't already offer. It's just the guidelines and sort of a template or a roadmap on how to get parents involved in education.
We are not discussing any of that. We are only addressing what's on the next page. The highlights. So
And I'm
these
happy
were-
to share what has changed. So what has changed right now
Right.
is just this back section where the Arizona Department of Education Statutory Handbook of Parental Rights is posted on the DOE website. There's also a link posted on our website, and this simply shares all of the titles and chapters of that parental rights handbook, and it's spelling that out for parents at this time.
I think that we absolutely benefit from not doing it today, but taking the time to put it in, because if we put it in time for relationship and evaluation next summer, I think that's a good look at this.
You know, both these policies are really important, and I agree, I could vote on both of them tonight, no problem. But they are going to come back into play when we enter our next action items. So it seems that we might, since neither one of them are critical, January 1, the policy goes into effect, am I mistaken, Jamie?
I'm sorry.
For the website, for the handbook on the website, that's a
Correct.
January 1 day.
Yes.
And then, of course, the civics isn't required until next September, so we do have the time. But I think that the things that John's picking out and the things that I've gone through and picked out, they highlight the fact that this is our fundamental job as board policy, and how much every word matters, and how important it is to get every single word right. So I would be in favor either way. I can adopt the changes tonight, but I would be in favor of just holding off and actually going through, maybe collecting the board's concerns throughout, having us meet again, having already had the concerns in front of all board members maybe, so that we're not individually at the time of the meeting going through it. Everybody already knows what everybody's looking at in the language. That's my thought.
For me, parts of this don't just affect parents, they affect staff as well that we decide. And because it's going to affect staff in a direct way, I think we need to make a more informed and understood attack at this rather than just approving something.
Well, we can go ahead and put it to a vote. So if we do have a motion right now that's just opened the discussion. So if we have a motion to close discussion, and then we can move on to a motion to approve 5.1 if someone makes that.
I move that we do not approve 5.1.
What
I
I'm looking
move
for
that
right
we
now is a
close
motion to
discussion.
close discussion.
I'm sorry, you're stepping on me when you say that. I move not to adopt 5.1 as presented tonight.
We need to close discussion first.
We do have a motion on the floor that we have to
I
vote
move to
on.
close discussion. You want a second?
Did you make a motion to close
I
discussion?
did.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Okay.
okay. Do I have a motion on 5.1?
Do we have to vote on that
We
motion
should vote
to
to close
close?
discussion. Yes.
Don't we have to vote to close the,
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston. Closed discussion.
Do you vote to close discussion?
Yes.
Kathy Cox.
Yes?
Archana Aliyar.
Yes.
Lisa Roman.
Yes. Do I have a subsequent motion on item 5.1?
I make a motion to postpone 5.1.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on postponing?
If we,
I can tell you that I am not in favor of postponing. I don't see that I have a good reason to do that. As I said, and as you said, I'm ready to vote on this tonight. So I am going to vote against the postponement.
okay, my own,
I don't feel,
I have a question for you then.
okay.
Do you believe that these are things that must be enforced and enacted in the next 3 months?
Well, they're not, but because Sandra Day upon her day would not be until September 25th of next year. But that would give us some time to prepare and give our staff some time to get together lessons and,
You're actually pushing forward the vote on a policy for the district.
but as I said, I feel like the policy is in place, and I feel like I have the information that I need to vote on it.
For a policy that does not take effect until what month?
Until September of next year.
So we've got over a year to look at this and make decisions on it as a group that, on something that's going to impact our staff and our students and their parents.
Yes, and as I said, I feel comfortable making that decision tonight. I don't see
I
a reason
call for the
to wait.
question.
I also feel like the changes we are making are not altering most of what your concerns are, is what I understand at
Well,
this point.
Okay, my thought is that, I think John is correct, that teacher input is, if we vote on it right now, I'm sure they're not going to start working on it next week, but still, in their minds, it's going to be one more thing in this uncertain world that no one knows what's going to even be going on next year. And I just don't want them to have that one more thing right now. They've got enough to deal with. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against it.
Well, we do have a motion to postpone on the floor, so if there isn't any further discussion, we can go ahead and take the vote.
I'm going to just make one more comment. So when we get these policy advisories from ASBA and they're just updating the legislative language that we have to adopt, we don't have a choice. I mean, we really don't have a choice on whether or not we adopt that little 2 paragraphs of that section. Of course, we have a choice on how we're going to implement that. But I think for the future, when we get these policies, maybe it's a reminder to every board member to look hard at the policy, because then we wouldn't have to do what we're about to do tonight, which is postpone or come back to or deny. We could just do one big cleanup at a time, because with very few exceptions, just about every policy that we have needs to be completely rewritten.
Yes.
So,
Well, I apologize, I forgot how the motion was written, so I will be voting for the motion to postpone. Is that what it said? I was
yes.
Yes.
thinking the
Yes.
other one. All right, so I've had my input, and let's call for the question.
Okay, so the vote is to postpone this motion.
John Maston,
Absolutely, yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes?
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Arjan Alliar,
No.
Lisa Roman,
No. Item 6.1 is the approval of performance pay for site-based goals for the year 2020, 2021, and it's presented by Ms. Vesta Daigle.
Madam President and Governing Board, it is recommended that the Governing Board approve the following performance pay site-based goals for 2021. Proposition 301, performance pay, was passed by Arizona voters in 2000 and has been paid annually to teachers since that time. LHUSD requires teachers to meet performance measures in order to be eligible for Fund 12 of Classroom Site Funds. The LHUSD Board approved the 301 framework in August. The framework states that site goals are to be approved in October by the Board. Lake Havasu Unified School District and its stakeholders have high expectations for students, teachers, and administrators. Each year, each site sets goals to improve student learning. Goals include 4 components. Student achievement. Each site will create student achievement goals based on the criteria. Goals will be submitted to and approved by the superintendent each fall. Successful attainment of goals will qualify staff members to receive 50% of site-based goals money. Professional development. Each site will develop professional development goals tied to student achievement goals. Goals will be submitted and approved by the superintendent each fall. Successful attainment of goals will qualify each member to receive 25% of site-based goals money. Parent communication and involvement. Each site will develop parent communication and involvement goals tied to student achievement. Goals will be submitted to and approved by the superintendent each fall. Successful attainment of the goal will qualify staff members to receive 25% of site-based goals money. Principals will share how these goals fit within the district targets and mission. One elementary school has chosen math as their goal, number sense, and number and operations in base 10. Pre to post test data will be used to show growth. 4 elementary schools have chosen literacy goals with a focus on informational texts, thinking maps, writing, and effective instructional practices for literacy development. Pre to post test data will be used to show growth. 1 elementary school has chosen improvement in ELA and math using pre to post test data to show growth. All elementary sites have PE and either music or art performance in their plan. Secondary sites have chosen goals around academic vocabulary improvement in all areas.
Do I have a motion on item 6.1?
I move to approve 6.1 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
A few. And I just wanted to first say that I'm appreciative of the administrative staff, Terry, probably most likely, or Jamie, for putting the board packet online and available to the public after the community asked for it at the last meeting. I appreciate that. So if you're at home watching, you can read along for yourself, and that's really nice. It's more than just the agenda. It's the whole packet minus personnel and confidential stuff. So thank you. But I have some questions about the whole process of this, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. But this highlights from the 2 board policies that we just postponed kind of for me. So this performance pay, which was approved originally, let's see, the framework was approved just this last August. But that framework has not changed substantially since it was created in 2003. And it's my understanding that the board participated at that time, but the board has not participated in any updating or whatnot. So 2003 to, 2020, that's a long stretch to have no input on it. So when I look at the student achievement, professional development, and parent communication, I have a couple of questions. Should they not be tied to the board goals in some way? Should they not be tied to the administrative goals that will be next in some way? The superintendent goals in some way? They should. And when I look at the parent communication and involvement, and then I look at the parent survey that went out, where am I? So 25% of the 301 money for pay for performance is based on the parents returning the survey. So it seems like maybe the survey questions might reflect the site goals. So when they're taking their survey, it's kind of reinforcing the goals and that they're engaged and kind of paying attention. So that was one thought that I had on that. And then when it came to the professional development, they're all slightly different, and I was just speaking with Brad before the meeting, so I won't go too much into that. But in the next action item, professional development was put in there, not statutorily, that was a board decision that this board has not made in 6 years that I've been on it. So I guess my point is I just want to highlight that this seems disjointed to all the different plans that we have, whether it's performance pay or the board or the superintendent evaluation, the comprehensive needs assessment, the high school accreditation. It seems like all of these plans should somehow feed each other. And I know that that's probably a impossible project, but it seems worth having a conversation at another time when everybody is prepared to have that conversation. So, and then, let's see, student achievement, professional development, and parent communication. So a couple notes on that, and I think I used Ora Grande as my example in here for all my questions, because I figured that maybe it would be less offensive to Mr. Bitterman if I used him as an example. So when I'm looking at the parent communication and involvement, there are so many things. No wonder everybody is so frustrated on where they're getting their information. parent conference, Zoom, documentation. So my question would be, is documentation considered a copy of the video with the parent? I don't know what that means, and that's an important question, because that really matters.
Well, just to
Sure.
address that, it does say the communication log right above that, and so that is, I guess I was making an assumption here, but the communication log, I would assume that that is the documentation that they're referring to, not a recording of the
That's fine,
Zoom.
but I would like that clarified,
Okay.
because we've entered a new era of technology, and this has been a concern for so long. I just want that publicly answered, that the communication log does not include saving a parent-teacher conversation.
Okay,
What bothers me is the fact that we have to remind teachers at any level that they need to talk to people and communicate with people when we've just had this in a different policy.
I understand.
I don't feel like it's, I'm going to disagree with you there a little bit, because I don't think that these guidelines are written to remind teachers of their responsibilities so much as it is to lay out clear expectations
Yes.
at the beginning so that everybody knows what they need to be doing throughout the semester, whether
But
that's
we
intuitive
are,
or not.
we are developing bonus pay based on what's in this, and so it is an expectation.
Yes,
So if we're telling somebody they're expected to do something and they don't actually do it, does that hurt them in their earnings? Or is that something that is just expected as a part of how these is actually laid out?
this is tied to their performance pay.
Right.
This is a 301 goal.
So we've got the Zoom documentation, the school and classroom newsletters, the PTAC communication, copies of notes and emails sent to individual parents, parent phone call log, class dojo communication, and Facebook communication. And again, Mr. Bitterman, I'm sorry, I'm using yours as the example, but so the Zoom documentation we just talked about, classroom newsletters, I think that's a great idea. You know, kids can be involved, it's a great writing exercise, et cetera. PTAC communication, I feel like that's an unnecessary, and I saw it on a couple of others, that it's unnecessary for that entity to be included in 301 goals as part of a communication. They're not employees of the district. I mean, maybe they are. You can be an employee and a parent and part of it. But it seems unnecessary that you would use that as your form of communication, because now you're going through a third party to communicate. Parent phone call log, that's fine. But then class dojo communication and Facebook communication, I disagree that we would, again, use that technology as a way to communicate with our parents. We have, every school district has their own little website, you know, that you can go to, that there can be, it needs to be simplified. We have this long list of ways we're communicating, and it's not like these distinctions are nuanced between somebody who's, you know, blind or deaf or doesn't have technology. These are just noise. There's too much. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. And I know people are trying to communicate however somebody will get it, but I just feel like you can't accommodate every single person.
I can tell you as somebody who has kids in school, because I actually have children in our school system, that when we went out of classroom and we went to the, over the internet teaching, I got calls from people who didn't know who I was, who didn't know what I did, and who actually told me that kids were missing assignments when they weren't missing the assignments, that they were actually being put in an envelope up front to be picked up by a bus. And when I told them that, they were mad at me and upset with me, and one of them was a computer technology person, and I went, that's what I do. But I can also tell you that as we go through this, and as we have COVID in our background, and as we've changed how we have schools open and closed, I think what we need to be well aware of is that some of the things in here may not always be workable the right way with certain people.
Well, I'm thinking in a school, how these kinds of ideas get generated. And typically what happens, the teachers each have their own ways that they're communicating and have been communicating for a while, ways that seem to be effective for them. And so, maybe there's a teacher who finds that most of her parents are on Facebook. She probably has her own fourth grade Facebook page for her school, just for her classroom, and she can show that communication going on, whereas another fourth grade teacher doesn't want to fool with that, that's not her thing or his thing. And so they only have to select 4, and so this gives teachers a lot of choice as to what they feel works best for them. So I'm not opposed to this list.
There were issues in my experience with teachers where I got emails, I was later given a call, or my wife was, and they didn't know who to talk to and when to talk to people. And that needs to be a part of this, making sure that you're doing the communication in an effective way.
I can appreciate your perspective from being an educator and whatever works for you to communicate. But honestly, you have parents. Can you imagine being a parent with somebody in 2nd grade, somebody in 5th grade, somebody in 9th grade, somebody in 12th grade, and every single one of those teachers has their own preferred method of communicating?
I absolutely can, because I've actually been there, because I have 4 children
know.
of different ages that have lived in my
So
home.
that's the point I'm making. This isn't, it needs to be considered that maybe that's not what's best for a family. And if you're communicating about important things tied to dollars that you are getting from the community that is paying the taxes, that is funding, the dollars that are paying for this, maybe it should be what's most convenient for the families, which means simplification to me.
Well, this is my suggestion. I think you raise a good point. Is something, especially with parents, this needs, as a principal and a few teachers, to sit down with a group of parents and say what works, what will work for us. I have a child in kindergarten, I have a child in 5th grade, I have another child over in 8th grade. What will work so that a teacher doesn't have to do 8 things or 12 things? But there has to be something. But I, as a board member, am not going to vote tonight to give teachers the things that they're going to have to do.
I specifically said that I was not asking for that. I was
Okay.
just bringing it up
Okay.
for a future conversation.
think
I'm not
that's-
trying to throw a
okay.
monkey wrench in
Okay.
the cycles
thank
for
you.
tonight.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So I have 3 children in schools as well. I have taken part in some of these site council meetings at Starline and at Thunderbolt. I can tell you that a lot of the discussion is centered, and I was there as a parent, not as a board member, as a parent. A lot of these site meetings that take place at the schools are with the intention of collecting feedback from parents, specifically with things like this with communication. What is the best way to communicate with a parent? And so unless I'm completely off base here, Mr. Bitterman might be able to weigh in, but I believe that these types of communication, these methods of communication were likely developed with parent preferences in mind. And it doesn't obligate a teacher to use all of these that are listed. It's only 4 of them. And so a teacher can, again, kind of take the temperature of her family situation and decide what would be most appropriate.
So my calls from Iowa back in the day were appropriate, because I was called by somebody who had an Iowa phone number.
Well, I have a Virginia phone number just because I've never changed it. That doesn't mean I'm calling from
I,
Virginia.
I understand that, I'm not complaining about that, but I don't know how to identify who that is calling.
Okay.
And they emailed me saying that my kids weren't turning work in. And they sent me a printout from one of the district systems that showed that my kids were failing when they had actually turned stuff in. There was a big miscommunication issue, and they were trying to get a hold of me on cell phone. which is not probably the best way to get a hold of me during a workday.
Was the situation eventually resolved? Were you able to figure out where the miscommunication was?
2 to 3 days later, yes.
So if I can just share a little bit of information, I think this speaks to the bigger issue of the board when you first started talking about your self-evaluation. And I know we're gonna have a work session about that, so I think that's great. And I think the thing with that is, as the board develops a self-evaluation that has goals and expectations, those are the goals and expectations for the district, for the superintendent, for your directors, for your administrators, to all be working in ways that support that bigger vision, mission that the board sets out each year. And I would completely agree that this format, I'm new to this, and I think that teachers had the best they could do to kind of finish out a year that really didn't end, and come back and to work on this. I'll be honest with you, I think these are pretty similar to what you saw last year, because we weren't in a place to really get in there and change them a whole lot. For me, and I'll talk specifically about parent communication, you're going to communicate in a million different ways, however your families feel best and feel most comfortable for you. For me, the key piece under that, and again, I haven't discussed this with principals or anyone else going forward, but I do think the key piece here is involvement. So it's really a focus on, in all that communication, what are we communicating to parents? Are we communicating about progress? Are we communicating about academic achievement? Or are we just communicating, not that we have field trips this year, but are we just communicating simple things like, here's the lunch item and here's our schedule for specials and those kinds of things. So if we focus a little more on involvement, it would be more meaningful to parents as to the information we were providing. And the other piece is it would speak to simplifying this for teachers to be moving forward. But again, this is what they've submitted for this year. I know there's some time crunch to that, but I absolutely wholeheartedly agree that this is a much bigger conversation that can align with things as we move forward. And I think it's great timing as you have it planned for a work session with the board self-evaluation, goal setting, and then the superintendent's evaluation, and that kind of goes down to everyone else's.
Well, I think my recommendation would be that we approve this item because, with that in mind in the future, because teachers still have to be working on this, and they have to know that it's okay before they get things going and have systems to keep track of things and that kind of thing. And then we can always, I have to be honest with this year, and who knows what next year in the spring is going to be like. Everything's really jagged right now. If we can just get this done, and it's just one of those things that's almost okay, let's just get it done. But it's not going to be perfect. There's no way it can be. I would prefer that we go ahead and approve this item tonight.
I appreciate that, but I'd like to finish my thought. I was interrupted starting. I just, I picked
I didn't
one
mean to interrupt you.
school to kind of go through my thoughts, and that was it.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay.
I don't know if I was the one or not.
So, and I specifically brought up communication because it's actually worth 25%. So I just wanted to give my thoughts on communication. And Mr. Bitterman called, and I'm sorry I can't answer the call. We're having a board meeting, but thank you. The second thing is professional development, because that is also worth 25%. So I think that is worth a conversation. Again, we can have it at another time. But it seems like that should somehow be attached to the board goals, as well as superintendent, yada, yada, yada. And then the last comment that I had, again, going back to Mr. Hawkins' 2019 presentation and the measurement of our performance indicators, and I understand the year, I understand the crunch that we're in. I just need to get it on the record that these are things that we should take a look at.
And I would support, actually, if we're going to have a work session to discuss our board evaluation tool, that seems like a perfect time to revisit this as well.
That's great.
I share Mrs. Cox's thoughts on approving this tonight because it gives our teachers sort of the green light to go ahead with the goals that they already have in place. It offers some continuity that bridges last year with this year, and we all know that the disruptions and everything that have occurred. This allows them to complete some goals that might have been unfinished from prior years, and so I appreciate that. And as I said, it basically gives them the framework that they need to work this year towards those performance-based goals.
Would it be, since this is for 2020, 2021 school
Yes.
year, would it be inappropriate to ask that this be in effect based on board input in January?
We're already late in the game. I mean, we're already behind the eight ball on this, and, but I would disagree. We can move on, but I would disagree that there's anything earth-shattering in any of these goals. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but these are not, you know, if a teacher is hanging on waiting for these goals in order to inform their instruction, I mean, these are, I don't know, they don't seem very targeted in the overall bigger picture, and they're very similar. I have 2019 here last year, so I think the continuity is already there. I mean, I think there's been some tweaks, and some have changed from whether it's math or, you know, I understand now they're doing art, music, and PE because the 301, as I understand it, was being paid, but there wasn't accountability. So that's great, and I didn't understand that. I'm thinking, why are we focusing on art, music, and PE? Well, now it makes sense. But yes, I think we should address this at another time. So,
I think that given the unusual goings-on this year, we should accept some flexibility and some fluidity in things like this and revisit in our work session and so on and so forth continuously, even though I would adopt something for now.
And that's what I'm thinking too, that I would vote in favor of this tonight with the idea that we will be talking about this at our work session and developing some 301 framework, basically, so that we can get the site goals to align more closely with our board goals and our superintendent. Right now, instead of having sort of three separate entities going on, it makes a lot of sense to develop as much overlap as possible.
okay.
Any further discussion?
Then my motion is that we approve this in January after we put our district level board changes to it.
We have a motion.
The motion on the table right now is to approve
Approve.
or to not.
I should be allowed to add another motion at my own thoughts.
Okay, well, if this motion fails, then you could, you could submit an alternate motion.
As a past president, I understand.
Are we ready to vote then?
What exactly are we voting on?
We are voting to approve,
Okay.
again, with the idea that we will talk about it at more length at the
Okay.
work session. I think we're ready to vote this one.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Aliyar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes,
John Maston,
Yes, with notes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 6.2 is the approval of administrator performance pay plan and criteria for the 2019-2020 school year, and this is presented by Ms. Festadagel and Dr. Stone.
Madam President and Governing Board, it is recommended the Governing Board approve the attached Administrator Pay Plan and Exhibit A Administrator Performance Pay Plan criteria for the 2021 school year. On September 11, 2012, the Governing Board approved an alternative procedure to meet the requirements of ARS 15339, Superintendent's Performance Pay. With the alternative procedure, the principal, assistant principals, directors, and superintendent will receive an equal portion of the designated sum if they meet all requirements. The breakdown of the requirements will be as follows: 25% for academic gain, 25% for parent satisfaction, 25% for professional development, and 25% for teacher satisfaction. The alternative procedure chosen by LHUSD has previously been approved by legal.
Do I have a motion on item 6.2?
I move that we approve 6.2.
I'll second that.
Discussion or question?
I just want to highlight that again, on 6.2, statute allows for the board, right now it's listed as professional development, so the academic gain, the parent satisfaction, and the teacher satisfaction are all statutorily required. But that fourth component, which is professional development, the board, that is a board function to come up with that fourth element. So this was voted on in 2012, and I appreciate you putting that in here, and I appreciate the transparency of it because it educated me on the fact that I needed to go read the statute a little bit. So we should look at that in the future. And then I also wanted to mention that the teacher survey for the teacher satisfaction, I'm looking at last year's and the questions, and I think that, and it's a thought for the next work session, that we should be looking at our educational philosophy, policy AD, for both the cycles and the superintendent evaluation, because in there, it says what the role of the admin is, what the role of the teachers are. So maybe the teachers, instead of the questions that are on the survey, should be measuring how the admin is doing against the policy that we put in place, saying this is what admin should be doing. Same with staff. Maybe the parent surveys should include the role from, the parent survey should include the role of staff and what the staff should do, at least as part of the measurement. And that was all I had to say on that.
I'll call for the question.
Maybe somebody else has some other questions? No?
Was there more board discussion on this or questions?
Okay.
Archana Aliyar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 6.3 is the approval of Taher Food Service contract for 2020-2021. It's a modification, and it's presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended the governing board approve the Taher Food Service Contract 18-1902 to include the SFSP Simplified Option Meal Service under Amendment 1.1. In 2019, the district approved a 5-year contract with Taher to provide food services under the regulations of the National School Lunch Program and the Summer Food Service Program Seamless Summer Option. The Seamless Option is designed for the school food authority to follow the same operational guidelines for food service during the school year and summer, making summer meals is simply an extension of what is already provided under NSLP regulations. The reimbursement rates for both the NSLP and SSO are $3.58 for lunch and $1.89 for breakfast. In 2020, USDA provided waivers that allow the SFSP simplified option to be utilized through December and is working to provide similar waivers through the school year. And that has, since the time of this draft or submission of this action item, that has actually occurred, where that has been extended to September 30th of 2021. So it's no longer through December, it's now September 30th, 2021. The SFSP simplified option allows the district to more readily provide to-go meals to the entire community. The simplified option will allow for more streamlined nutrition requirements and reduce waste, while also providing the district with a significant 94-cent increase in per meal set for breakfast lunch combination under federal reimbursement. The SFSP simplified option allows for an increased reimbursement rate of $4.08 for lunch, $2.33 for breakfast. USDA has currently waived the additional paperwork and submitted budgets under the SFSP. that would normally make this program burdensome for an SFA. The amendment document has been submitted to the Arizona Department of Ed and has been approved, and a copy is attached for the board to review. And we have a Taher representative, and Ann Tafe with the district, if you have any questions.
Do I have a motion on item 6.3?
I have a question.
I move that we approve 6.3 as presented.
I second.
Go ahead with your question, Mr. Masden.
Mr. Murray, are you comfortable with what these extra costs are going to be?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I asked Mr. Murray if he was comfortable with what the new cost would be.
Well, it's a reimbursement, so the reimbursement rate is going up. Now, the cost to food service right now currently, because of everything happening right now and a lot of uncertainty, our food service program, they're struggling, but we're trying to continue to improve. It seems like our numbers are improving now that we have kids going back to school. But this would help the district because the reimbursement rate goes up.
We can't hear you.
Would you mind just, I'm sorry, would you mind speaking into the microphone, and would you mind introducing yourself? I know who you are, but
I know who he is too.
I'm Christopher Gallagher, the school food service director and representative of Taher tonight. So the reimbursement rate will go up by nearly $1 for a breakfast and lunch meal as we serve curbside. The cost savings will be that National School Lunch Program has a very cumbersome vegetable and fruit requirement that requires a certain amount of cups of green vegetables, red vegetables, starchy vegetables that kids mostly throw away. And we have to pack all those, even though we know they're going in the garbage. And that takes extra labor, takes extra food. So the simplified summer program allows us to still serve the same portion of fruits and vegetables, but it allows us to choose things the kids like celery sticks, carrot sticks, apples, oranges.
I want to thank you because it's important for our community to know that we're not just going to put a bunch of extra money into food. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And also, you've served thousands, not just you personally, but your entire team have served thousands of meals through the summer and always do that during the breaks and everything too. And thank you.
Thank you. From mid-March through the beginning of the school year, we served more than 80,000 meals.
80,000?
Yeah. We've served 50,000 since then.
I will vouch for him that kids are getting meals who don't have any money on their account, and that is a good thing to be around and be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you watched The Magic Pill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You seem like you knew that she was going to ask you that question.
We've had that a few years, right?
Only took 2 years.
My first year here, I watched the video of my boss being asked that question, so I watched it right away.
Excellent. Thank you.
The Magic Pill. I assume it's a documentary.
It's a documentary. I recommend anybody watch it who's concerned with nutrition and food, and health and wellness.
Mr. Murray, I did have a question. Does this program impact Title I funding for this school year?
Does this program impact Title I? That's,
That's still up in the air. I do not believe it's going to. I did really push hard to get meal applications out, especially at the title schools. I think I'm still waiting on guidance from ADE, but it looks like we're going to go back and look at last year's numbers because all of the districts are having the same problem. And they heard it was free for all. Nobody wanted to fill out applications.
And I'm sorry, you are Mrs. Tape, is that correct? Okay. I recognize you from a previous meeting, and I remember you introducing yourself saying it's not taffy because your mother said you weren't sweet enough or something like that. Yes? Okay. Mrs. Fleming, did you catch that for the purposes of minutes taking? Okay. Thank you for that information.
I move that we would accept 6-3 as presented, and note that Ann is the person we should credit for it. Okay, we'll take the whole team.
Was there any other further discussion from our board? No? Okay. I believe we already had a motion and a second on this, yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archiana Alliar,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 6.4 is the approval of vouchers, student activity funds, and auxiliary funds, and it's presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended the board approve vouchers for September of 2020, as well as student activity funds for both July and August, and the auxiliary funds for August of 2020.
Do I have a motion on item 6.4?
I move we approve 6.4 as presented.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
So nice to have all this on one page. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So nice to have all this on one page.
Yes, absolutely. And so much generosity coming through.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archiana Alliar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 7 is informational. And it looks like we do have an informational item on here. From our superintendent.
We have informational items from Educational Services, from Personnel and Technology, and from Special Services. Most of those have come to you via action items to the board, but just additional information for you all to read and available to the public. The business office doesn't need to provide this because I talked to Mr. Murray and I said, I think you present repeatedly at all board meetings. So most of the information is already out there. Specifically from me, I just wanted to share with everyone, obviously our elementary schools are fully open now, and that is going really well. I just want to thank all of our administrators and our teachers. I know that it's a new experience, but everybody is hands-on and doing what they need to do for all of our kids and our families. Our middle school and high school are open hybrid right now. Again, our teachers are working a little bit of overtime to make sure they can still provide in-person learning and the distance learning when kids are not on campus, and for kids who've chosen that. And I know that is really hard right now, so we are looking forward to being fully open as soon as we possibly can. What I would ask from our community is for all of our parents to just continue to monitor your kids' health symptoms and make sure that if they are experiencing any kind of illness that they are staying home for that day, just to make sure that we're protecting our entire school community.
And there's no penalty for absences, but please, we are relying on our partnership with our parents and families to make sure that we keep our schools safe. The goal is to keep it open without an interruption.
Absolutely. We understand this year that kids may be absent more than usual. We're not penalizing them in terms of, we used to have perfect attendance awards and it used to be part of citizenship grades and things like that. That is not a penalty at all. But we are still working to make sure that if you are not sick, you are coming to school.
Anything from any of our board members on the informational section?
I have a question.
Okay.
This
Well,
is,
Is it informational?
well, I'm hoping if Mr. Murray will answer my question, it will become informational. Is that okay?
Yes.
I read in the paper today, I think, was it called Transwestern, the utility that the county is going to have to pay back the taxes that were paid in. And I was a little shocked to read that MCC is going to be one of those, and I continue to read into the article, and it said school districts will be affected. How is that going to affect our school district, if at all?
I don't have updated information on that yet at this time, unless Dr. Stone has that.
I do. We are not included as one of the school districts who owes any money for that.
Oh, good, I'll sleep better tonight.
But
Thank
some
you.
are, and they're on the hook for a hefty price.
Oh.
It is a very hefty price. That was difficult for some
Yeah.
school districts to receive, but we are not included in that.
Thank you.
It's my thanks to everybody out there who is a taxpayer into the system for being faithful and putting the money in. Thank you, everyone.
Do we have any calls to the public? Okay. Any board suggestions for future agenda items?
I just have the one hanging out there, and, you know, I can use it at any action item that we talked about tonight or now, but I really, before I'm off the board, would like to see an effort to wrap up the education philosophy, the critical thinking piece that Mr. Hawkins spoke about to us last year. It's like the final piece in that work. So I feel like it's important to address that in some way, shape, or form before December.
I agree with her. I think that's very important that we get on it.
Do we have any questions from the press or the media? Then at this time, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Cole Cohen,
No.
Archin Elliott,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes.